That's what we saw in Mississippi back in, let's see, it was 2017, where we launched the Mississippi Future Caucus, and we worked with a young lawmaker named Representative Jeremy Anderson and his colleague Rep. Toby Barker. And they said, let's get all the young people together. We're going to put them in a room. We're just going to have some drinks, have some food. Because, people don't come to things unless you have food and drinks. So, of course, they, had to do it over dinner. And just had a moment behind closed doors, no press, to just get to know one another, to just start to talk. Um, and at that very first meeting with the drinks and the food, they started going around the table and saying, well, what do we think this group could work on? What do we want to focus on as a group of young people? And somebody threw out like some tax policy ideas. Somebody said something on like education. And then gets around the table and somebody says, well, what about the state flag, which currently has Confederate iconography on it? What if we did some legislation to change that? And you could hear a pin drop in the room. Like,
Yep.
that is not the low-hanging fruit that this group was looking to sort of start with. And they said, you know what, that's okay. We can disagree on that. We don't need to like start with the things that we disagree on. Let's start with the things that we do agree on. And so they did just that. They kept meeting, they kept getting to know one another, they kept having happy hours and dinners. And eventually they started working on some tax policy stuff. And they started working on some education stuff. They started notching wins. They started doing things together. And then they would get wins, and that would feel good. And they would feel like, they've got this rhythm, they've got trust, they've built an ability and a just familiarity with working with one another. Um, and fast forward now, it's 2020. And in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd and just the racial reckoning that swiftly followed across the country, everywhere, in Mississippi, what that looked like was a renewed call from the people for action on this state flag that still had the Confederate iconography on it. And so somebody in the Future Caucus said, let's talk about this now. We didn't want to talk about it in 2017, but would you all be open to a discussion? And they said, okay, because now they had trust. Now they knew that this was going to be in good faith. And they were able to sit down and share authentically what it meant for them, uh, what they were scared of, what they hoped for. And ultimately, at the end of that discussion, the Mississippi Future Caucus, mostly Republicans and Democrats, voted in favor of changing the state flag. And today, that state flag does not have Confederate iconography on it. Um, and so I love that example because to me, it takes the impossible and it shows how you make it possible. And the caucus was not meeting just so that they had this sort of like secret end goal in mind where like this is the thing that we're going to do. No, they wanted to meet because they wanted to strengthen the fabric of how they made decisions, of how they made choices in service of other people. And because of that trust, because of the transformation that occurred within that group, something almost unimaginable was able to happen in just 3 years.